the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O-Neil.
We are now entering week 11 of 16 in the Canadian Football League. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I am your host, Clint Bubba O-Neil. Three outstanding panelists are waiting by my side to talk about what we're looking forward to and what has just happened in just yet another wild week in the CFL. Let's start with CFL on TSN sideline reporter extraordinaire, feature reporter, Matthew Scianitti. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, good to see you, Bubba.
Folks, we have a rookie on the cast now. We have a rookie. His name is Dan Ralph. He covers the league as well as anyone on Canadian.
That's no rookie. That's a Hall of Famer.
He is a Hall of Famer, but he's a rookie to us. So definitely thank you for joining us, Ralphie. We're looking forward to hearing what you got to say.
No rookie hazing, please.
AJ Jakubec joins us from TSN Radio in Ottawa. And I mean, AJ, you've joined us before. Controversial as always. Again, we're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thanks. Not a lot of controversy in Ottawa these days, but yeah, excited about the stretch drive around the league. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
That it is. And I think all of a sudden there's been a element of surprise and excitement that has been added in the Canadian Football League with what I'm going to call a very shocking trade. I guess we shouldn't be so shocked by seeing Trevor Harris in street clothes in Friday night's loss to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But just 2 days later, he's sent over to the Montreal Alouettes in a deal for Antonio Simmons, the defensive end. And Matthew, I'm going to start with you. Is there a winner or loser in this trade? And were you surprised by the transaction?
I don't think I was, Bubba. I think we all were expecting it. And winner and loser, I'm beginning to feel worse and worse for Elks fans only because for them, I don't necessarily know if they are seeing a direction for their franchise. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do an Eddie Steele here and start taking shots at people. I don't think that's fair. Obviously, Brock Sutherland's been in the league a long time. Been a part of, as AJ knows, was part of the Red Blacks organization for a long time, and his father was an NFL executive for a long time. So he must have a plan. Jamie Elizondo is an accomplished coach in this league, but it is disappointing to see what's happened to the Elks and to see not just what's happened with the Elks internally, but to see reactions around the league. As for Trevor, I knowing Trevor as I have since I started covering the league, he will take this in stride. He is always very focused. I mean, AJ knows this very well, and so does Dan. I mean, we've covered, Dan and I covered him when he was with the Argos and when he made the move over to Ottawa, and then obviously AJ covered him quite extensively when he was with the Red Blacks. And Trevor's had to deal with shifting and moving and expectations changing his whole CFL career. So he will know how to deal with this. But I think for me, I feel bad, worse for Elks fans.
Dan, I thought this was like a major free agent signing when they picked up Trevor Harris in the offseason. Does this blow you away?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo everything that Matt just said. I'm not surprised. And I figured if they were going to deal him, they weren't going to deal him within the West. Nobody needs a quarterback in the West. So, I mean, by elimination, it was going to come out east somewhere, and it wasn't going to be Ottawa. So, I mean, you just had to take a look. I still think he is a marquee quarterback. I do. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers. He's a 70% career completion percentage, passer. He's won a Grey Cup. I think I can't put my finger on what went wrong in Edmonton, only because he's familiar with the head coach. He ran that offense in Ottawa and ran it very well, I may add. They've got a Grey Cup together. And for some reason or other, it didn't happen in Edmonton. And I mean, you got to look at maybe the supporting cast. I'll echo what Matt says. I'm really curious now what the direction of the Edmonton Elks is. And I don't see it because if they're getting rid of their marquee quarterback, I think the kicker's next. And if I were in Winnipeg, I'd be on the phone to Brock yesterday and ask him what it would take to get Sean White into Winnipeg, because I think this tells me that there's a bit of a fire sale going on in Edmonton.
AJ?
Yeah, in terms of the Elks, I mean, I grew up in Edmonton, and it's it's sad to see because I grew up there seeing games in the early 80s when they were the class of the league, and you could have argued for that period from the late 70s until probably when they won their second last Grey Cup, because they won again in 2015, but in 2005 that they were the model franchise in the Canadian Football League, and you can't anywhere near say that anymore. So fans there are frustrated for sure. In terms of Trevor Harris, I mean, this is a guy, there's one quarterback in the Canadian Football League that has a win in the last two playoffs, and that's Trevor Harris. He won the East Final in 2018, one of the best performances we've seen in playoff history. He had 6 touchdown passes in that game against the Ticats. And then in 2019, he was 36 of 39 for Edmonton in a win against Montreal. So I'm sure, the Alouettes would know that, that this is a guy that's still capable of performing at a high level. We saw it on Labor Day against the Stampeders. So for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked this year in Edmonton for a variety of reasons. You can't all just pin it on the quarterback. So I think it's a no-lose situation for the Montreal Alouettes, because they needed a little bit more depth with the loss of Vernon Adams Jr. They go out, they get Trevor Harris. Matthew Schultz has performed quite well in a game and a little bit. But you've got the insurance of a guy that can win playoff games. And so for me, the Alouettes are big winners, and the Elks need to figure out, just like Dan and Matthew said, they just need to figure out where they're going here.
Well, guys, when you have attendance issues in Edmonton, that's a problem.
Guys, let me go the other way here in terms of Montreal. And I mean, David Naylor, a guy we all respect here as a CFL insider, is in touch with anyone in the league. He's of the opinion that Trevor Harris has been brought in as a backup to Matthew Schultz. Now, I don't know. I mean, is that posturing? I can't believe, Dan, that's actually the truth there. To me, as soon as that guy's ready, he's the starter.
Yeah, I think he's the backup for now. And I mean, I think it's asking a lot of Trevor to come in and assume the mantle and be the starter in a week or even 2 with an offense he has no clue about, and with personnel that he has no clue about. So I don't think he's wrong. I think he's the backup for now. This tells me something a little different, though. 2 things. One, how serious is that injury to Vernon Adams? And I mean, he's on the 6, but they have the option of bringing him back early if they want. This tells me that maybe he's done for the year. And if that's the case, then the Alouettes have a decision to make next February, or whenever that $300,000 roster bonus is due with Trevor. So, I mean, my guess is Danny just said, I need help now, and we'll worry about the roster bonus in the offseason. And in the meantime, I think they have a backup for now. But I'm with you, Bubba. As soon as he's ready, I think it becomes Trevor Harris's offense.
AJ?
Yeah, I think it depends on Matthew Schultz. If Matthew Schultz continues to perform at a high level, I thought he was okay in the win against Ottawa. He was very good on the last drive on the holiday Monday. So, if he comes out and I mean, this is a guy that's been in the organization for 4 years and has bided his time. He knows the offense quite well. So if he performs well and they win games, then I think you keep going with him. But, at the very least that if he struggles to win games and if they struggle offensively, you'd like to think William Stanback's going to be back next week after, that bout with food poisoning kept him out of the last Ottawa game. I think that group of receivers with, Quan Bray and BJ Cunningham and Eugene Lewis and Jake Winicki is as good as there is in the Canadian Football League. So all the pieces are in place there to succeed offensively. And if Matthew Schultz doesn't get the job done, at the very least, you've got a guy again who can win playoff games. So I'd be very surprised if we don't see Trevor Harris, but I think it all depends on Matthew Schultz and how he performs the next few weeks.
Matthew, one more to you here. I mean, let's go back to the Elks side of things. Jamie Elizondo, is he fighting for his job?
Yeah. I mean, the nature of the Canadian Football League is often this. especially when it comes to the dynamic between head coaches and general managers. And Jamie, when I spoke to him a few weeks ago, said to me, well, Brock and I are having conversations all the time about culture. We have conversations about culture every day. Now, I'm not going to say that's a sell job or what that was or wasn't politically, but the fact is, in this league, it's cutthroat. And I mean, AJ, we saw this in Ottawa. I mean, between the general manager and the head coach and all the discussions around them with Rick Campbell and Marcel Desjardins. I mean, it's as success or failure, someone's going to want to take credit for it either way. And I think, or someone's going to be the scapegoat either way. And at this point, as much as I do, and you have to respect everything that Jamie Elizondo has done, especially his time in Ottawa and a little bit in Toronto, and the fact that he earned the opportunity. Edmonton is last in the West, and it doesn't look good, and someone's got to wear that. But very quickly on Trevor. Trevor's been, AJ and Dan know this very well. Trevor has been nothing but a good teammate in the situations where he had to be the backup. He won as a backup in 2016. He won as a backup in Toronto in 2012. He knows how to be a good team player, but that is a guy who will, and we all know him, who will fight for his opportunity to get in there. But coming in and having to be the backup and kind of learn the offense and spend time with Kahari, I think he will have no problem doing that. But Matthew Schultz is going to have to go ahead and deal with that Argos defense this week. And that Argos defense right now, they are looking to hurt people. And he's going to have to deal with Sean Oakman, and we will see what Matthew Schultz has got. If he can overcome the Argos, then maybe he's got a claim to that job.
Guys, about a month ago on this very program, we were actually looking at the possibility of both teams in Alberta not making the postseason. When was the last time that's happened? All of a sudden, the Stampeders have put together a nice little run, 5-5. Man, they look real good in blowing up BC last week. And now they're hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who I think many of us thought were either going to be first or second, not only in the CFL, but probably in the league. Guys, who's going to win this contest, Dan? Who do you like? Do you trust the Stamps?
I do. I you know what? I think they beat Saskatchewan again. I think they've just got Saskatchewan's number. I think Saskatchewan right now, after that start, Saskatchewan's been very, very suspect. And I love Cody Fajardo as a person. I think he's great when things are going well. We'll see what he and the Riders are made of now, because they're going through a bit of adversity, and I think they have to do a bit of gut check. Now, I can't remember if that game's in Regina or in
it's in Calgary.
Then even more. Then I think the Stamps are on. I think Calgary's on a nice roll. They're at home, and it would not surprise me in the least if they beat Saskatchewan again. They've won 3 straight. The first 2 of those was a home and home with the Riders. So I think they've got the Riders' numbers right now, and they're catching Saskatchewan at a great time.
AJ, I thought there was a couple, not that long ago, maybe you were on one of our podcasts here, where we were saying that Bo Levi Mitchell, is he shot? Is he done? Looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, and I felt that those were greatly exaggerated at the time. And, what do they say about form is temporary and class is permanent? I mean, this is, the best quarterback in the Canadian Football League, for basically the better part of the last decade. And, he's starting to round into form. He's healthy. And I think the Calgary Stampeders, we've seen over the course of the last 5 years, I mean, both of these teams went to 3 Grey Cups in that time. And Calgary was the class of the league, right? Ottawa went to 3 Grey Cups. When you go to numerous Grey Cups like Calgary and Ottawa did in that period between 2014 and 2018, teams are going to pick your best players. And you see around the league, a lot of the best players from those teams from Ottawa and Calgary are scattered throughout the league. And the one thing Calgary has done, they got hurt by that for sure. Everyone's going to be hurt by losing a lot of your top players, but they've continuously recruited so well. John Huffnagel and his staff have done a terrific job of that. And Dave Dickinson has coached those young guys up year after year after year. So this Calgary team, I always thought that, their depth was greatly exaggerated. I think there were some people that thought they were done this year. But, this is a team that, as long as John Huffnagel is running the show and Dave Dickinson is coaching, and they've got Bo Levi Mitchell at quarterback, they're going to have a chance to win games, and they're going to be a team that gets better as the season progresses. That's what we're seeing right now. And right now, they look like the second best team in the Canadian Football League, to me, behind Winnipeg.
Matty, is that kind of the situation? I know we've given Dave Dickinson all kinds of props over the years, well-deserved for being such a winner, but pulling together this team from where it did look like they were done. And I remember there was a loss against Hamilton where he actually called out his quarterback and kind of put the finger on himself and his quarterback and all the high-priced players. But are we seeing him maybe in the midst of his best coaching job of his coaching career?
That's a good question. There is no one who has built a better culture in the Canadian Football League than Dave Dickinson, obviously under the guise of John Huffnagel. But the one thing about Dickinson that is so apparent now, maybe that we didn't appreciate before when they were winning and beating teams and winning 14, 15, 16 games a season, is the calmness. Like, he's going to go ahead and as you mentioned, Bubba, have a barb or two in the media, and it's, that's motivation if nothing else for his players. But to see the way that he's been relaxed, trusting what they've built in that locker room, and that's when you really see the value of culture. Going back to Edmonton, that's what Edmonton had for so long. That's what made them the great franchise, the standard franchise in the Canadian Football League for decades, was what happens when things get tough. And to see the way that Calgary has played, to see, I think, Bo too, watching him, we're seeing on social media, especially what he had to say about not throwing a blanking pick, and to see how he's just more relaxed. And I spoke to him about that earlier this season, and his perspective on understanding where he is in his career and all of the experiences that he's dealt with and the disappointments and losing the Grey Cups. And I think that's all basically helped, especially him, understand how to deal with the adversities of injuries and tough seasons and things not going right. But Dave Dickinson, his calmness, to see him, just the way he's comported himself in the media and around his players, the little bit I've been able to see, you're absolutely right. This could be his best coaching display that since he's been the head of the Stampeders.
You got a winner for me?
The one thing about this is a key game for Saskatchewan because they got a game in hand, and they're still 500, and winning that game creates separation. I do believe that Saskatchewan's going to be up for it because I think that they understand all the factors around it. There's no doubt that Calgary's got momentum, but I'm going to go a little off the board, and sometimes you have to do in the Canadian Football League, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the Stampeders. Sorry, the Rough Riders, the Rough Riders to win.
AJ, you got a winner for me?
Oh, I hate doing this as an Edmonton guy, but I'll take Calgary.
Ew. Oh my goodness. All right, guys, this is a tough one here. In the beginning of the CFL season, there was a quarterback controversy, or quarterback battle, that we'll call it, and a controversy to some, and Hamilton. It was probably the one place where there was a belief that there was a true battle for the number one starting position. Now, I think that it was given to Jeremiah Masoli, not only and according in the words of head coach Rolando Steiner, he won the job. I think there was also a feeling that he was in some ways maybe deserved the job because he lost his job to injury. The Tiger Cats right now are in third place. They're sub 500. Jeremiah Masoli's 0-4 as a starter, and there's a real good belief that Dane Evans will be healthy for the rematch against Toronto. Dan, this is a tough decision for the head coach. You're saying it's not. Who's the number one guy?
I put Evans in tomorrow. I think based on what I've seen this year, the offense at least moves with Dane. And you know what? I think Jeremiah's had ample opportunity. I keep waiting for him to show me that he's the 219 Jeremiah Masoli. And if I've seen it, it's been in bits and spurts. At least with Dane, I think, like they do with Dave Watford, they've got the idea, they've got the mindset that we're going to win this game. We're either going to win it with a defensive pick six. Frankie Williams is going to return a kickoff or a punt, and the offense is going to do just enough to win. I don't think, I haven't seen anything with Jeremiah in the fold or in the offense that shows me that offense has the killer instinct. They've lost their last 2 home games with significant leads in the fourth quarter because they can't put teams away. And if you can't put them away, you give a team a life, and then all of a sudden they believe that they're going to come back, and they do. And they've had ample opportunities with Jeremiah. And I you know what? In 219, he doesn't get hurt. He's my MOP running away. And I haven't seen that form in 221 yet. So in my mind, if Dane is ready to go, I put Dane in tomorrow.
Matthew, you pace those sidelines at Tim Hortons Field, and you're as close to the action as any one of us. Who's your guy to start this week?
Well, I'm the guy. Being that I'm closer than anybody else, I'd be the one who's getting reaction closer than anybody else. I'm not going to be diplomatic here. I will say this. Jeremiah has worked harder than anybody else to get to this point. I've watched, Dan's watched his career as well since 2013, 14. I've said the story a million times, from being a guy who was almost on the street to working his way from practice squad all the way up to be the starter. I'm keen to see what he does this week. And if he performs, yes, granted, it's against the Red Blacks and where they are right now. But I want to give him a chance only because I have seen Jeremiah be the heartbeat of this team. I have seen him, fight with this team. There is no doubt that anyone can point out to me that it was Dane Evans, of course, with an injury to Jeremiah Masoli, that brought the Ticats to the Grey Cup in 2019. But Jeremiah has earned the opportunity. However, if this week he struggles, or if they lose at home for the 3rd straight game, I guess the last place Ottawa Red Blacks, then yeah, there's no doubt about it. But I'm giving him one more chance only because I know how hard he works, and everyone's allowed to have a dip and a bump. But his window, I will say this, there's no doubt about it. His window for convincing the Ticats he's the guy for the rest of the season is closing, and it's closing fast.
He did put up his most significant numbers of the season in that last week's loss to Toronto. I'm sorry, but I did say there was a rematch against Toronto. It is against Ottawa. Thanks for correcting me there. And side story here, you talk about getting your head ripped off. Well, I Ken Austin and I had some words several times too.
Ken Austin had words with everybody, Bubba.
Because I was very vocal in the Caleros days saying, why doesn't this guy Masoli get an opportunity? Because we saw what he did in a playoff game in Ottawa and thought he could certainly get the job done when Zach was struggling. But anyway, I digress. AJ, you're the Ottawa guy. Which quarterback would you rather see?
Oh, it's a great question. Ottawa's got. Can we just take some guys away from the defense and allow them not to blitz? How about that?
That's not gonna happen.
Masoli, look, if I'm Hamilton, I'm probably going Masoli another week as well. Because I feel like if you decide to go to Dane Evans now and something else happens to Dane Evans, that would be maybe crushing for his confidence. And maybe, look, I don't know him that well. Maybe he comes back and lights it up after that. We'll wait and see. But I feel like you give Masoli, he seems to be getting better as the season has progressed. He started so slow. And yeah, the last couple of games, they weren't able to win, but the numbers have been better. He hasn't thrown interceptions the last couple of games. You've got an Ottawa team that's reeling, that probably isn't going to score a lot of points, given just how their offensive line is, given how they're going to dress 2 rookie quarterbacks, one who's been here less than a month in Duck Hodges, who's going to back up Caleb Evans, who's thrown 2 games with 3 interceptions, and Devontae Dedmon's probably not going to play as well. And he's the most dangerous player on the Red Blacks. So I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for Jeremiah Masoli to go out and get a win. And if it doesn't happen, if he doesn't show well, you still have a few weeks left in the season where you can go back to Evans at that point. So I feel like if you make the switch now, there's really no going back, because you don't want to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's not like you're sitting Evans if he's ready just because of performance. You're just keeping going with Masoli because Evans is coming back from injury, and you can at least couch it that way and say, hey, just get back ready. And when we need you, we're going to throw you out there. So let's see what Masoli can do this week. And you can always make changes in the last month of the season.
Dan, you're outnumbered 2-1 here. I'm a little surprised. Defend yourself again, please.
Well, I just think, yeah, you're playing Ottawa, but you can't. I found in the East Division this year, you can't take anything for granted. And we saw Evans, play well in his very first game. The law of averages to me suggests that Caleb's got to get back to what Caleb did in his first game, because since that winning his debut, he's had more interceptions than touchdowns. And I just think that Hamilton has not shown me the ability yet that it can put teams away, especially in its last 2 home games. And I think if they do that again with Ottawa, then all of a sudden you start to believe that we can do this. And then they've got past history. Like, well, we've seen 2 teams beat Hamilton in at Tim Hortons. I don't think Hamilton is showing that it's unbeatable at home anymore. And the more teams that do it, I think it becomes even more difficult for them to reestablish their home turf identity. Now, I think Ottawa comes in with a laissez-faire attitude, like, we got nothing to lose here. And I just think, to me, the offense has Hamilton won with Dane Evans. Hamilton won with Watford. You're down at the point of the year now where you got to win, and you can't mess around with this.
Well, you're right. They're a third place club, and AJ, Dan offers a very interesting point there. You've got a Red Blacks team that everyone's kind of writing off. Maybe they can be pull an upset on the road here. That could happen.
Well,
I don't think Hamilton losing at home is an upset anymore. Interesting.
Ottawa is really good in 2 phases. Their special teams to me are the class of the league, and their defense outside of 2 games, they had a couple of rough games in a row against Montreal and BC, and their secondary was banged up. So their defense and their special teams can definitely win them games. They need to not turn the ball over and to be able to score, an offensive touchdown or 2. Just the problem is the O-line right now with Ottawa. And, they've gone with 10 different groups in 10 weeks. And we'll see what this week's going to bring. But you get the sense that they're probably going to have an 11th group in a row this week. They've had 7 different guys start their first CFL game this year on that offensive line. And a couple of them have really looked over their heads. So, depending on who they have back, if they have a couple of guys back from injury, which I think is a possibility, then that gives them a bit of a fighting chance. But if they don't have a couple of these key guys back on the offensive line, I think it could be another long day.
Matthew, we were just talking about Dave Dickinson, maybe having his best, arguably one of his better seasons as a head coach. And I almost feel like it was so easy for Orlando Stein. We're not saying it was easy, but success came so quickly last season in those 15 victories. This has got to be, and I've talked to the head coach, and he said this has not been fun for him. The fun continues. Do you see any chance of an upset here against the Ottawa Red Blacks?
Well, the one thing I will say is this: if you don't think that pressure is going to be a thing in Hamilton, they always talk about iron sharpening iron. The Grey Cup insignia, the Grey Cup stands, everything is going to start to be built in the next few weeks. And knowing that for that organization, as we all do, and knowing the time and the care and the investment that Scott Mitchell and Bob Young have put in that organization, nothing showed me more that the pressure is starting to build than the shot after the game. And the fun team we're not talking about yet in the East is the Argos. And I know this obviously is on the Ticats audio network, but the fact is, the Argos are first. And to watch that moment after Boris Beattie hit the kick and they did a split screen of Bob Young's box and Pinball Clemens' box, and to see kind of the reaction that they had in the Ticats ownership box, it shows me that pressure is starting to build, because this was always supposed to be, at least from, our outside perspective of the media, the great way to end this Ticats story of the culture they've built since 2013 when they were in Guelph all the way to this point, and how, they lost in 2014 and they lost in 2019. And Orlando Steinauer was the next iteration of that culture that Kent Austin built, that was led, the foundations were laid by Scott Mitchell and Bob Young and the executive. This is as close to a must win against the last place team, because right now the Ticats do not have a playoff game. And it is crucial, I think, for them, just that energy that they want to build. Now, Orlando Steinauer would completely dismiss me and say, what are you talking about? That doesn't matter. All that matters to us is continuing to build and find ourselves through this season. But I believe, given how much I've been around that team, how I know the energy of that building, how loud it gets, and to feel like those last two losses that they've had against Montreal and Toronto late, to feel the pin being popped with those fans, and then, realizing at the end, as they often did, years before, the Ticats pull out another home win. This is not crisis point. This isn't like, they're still 4-5. They're still a good team. This is just, things that happen during a football season. And as I often remind people, the Ticats historically are a team that floats around 500 or just above, or in their bad seasons, far below, but they are typically a team that kind of floats around 500. But the expectation has been set by Orlando Steinauer, much like it was set in Calgary, that culture is supposed to breed wins and keep building good feeling. And this is a tough point. And we've seen what Calgary has done and what Dave Dickinson has done. And now we're going to see what Orlando Steinauer is going to do. And yeah, the runway is shorter because this is a shorter season. But I imagine that the messaging within Tim Hortons Field and the offices there and the meeting rooms there is like, okay, everybody, like, we've got, it's week 11. We've got a month here, and we've got a month to go ahead and figure ourselves out. And whether that's changing the quarterback position, irrespective of what happens this week, whether it's making adjustments along the way, this is a big week for Mark Washington and Hamilton's defense. This is a big week for notwithstanding the injuries they've dealt with Jeff Reinbold and the special teams for Hamilton. Like, this is a big week for everyone across the board, because winning is the ultimate elixir. And at this point, not winning and losing at home, again, not a crisis point for Hamilton, but it's a point in this season where they have to go ahead and show us who they are as a 2021 group, because the Grey Cup is there. The expectation has been set that they want to get there. We all had it before the start of the season, and right now they're not meeting the expectation.
Last one to you on this, Dan, because you and I have sat beside each other for the last couple of losses at Tim Hortons Field. And of course, in a professional setting, there's not supposed to be any cheering in the press row, but it's been absolute shock, quite honestly, to see the Tiger Cats lose the two games against their opponents, against Montreal and Toronto. Is the words or the phrase "must win"? Is that really where the Ticats are right now at 4-5?
Well, yeah, I think for all the reasons Matthew pointed out, I mean, they need a home. I mean, I don't know. I used to think home field advantage was big, but I think they need to stay close to Montreal and Toronto, because right now Montreal and Toronto are like, Toronto's 2 games ahead, and you've got one more game to play against the Argos. Montreal is 2 points ahead, I think. But I mean, I look at those 2 home wins, those 2 home losses. If Hamilton takes care of business and wins those 2 games, then we're talking about the Ticats coming off the bye, still in first place. They're where we thought they should be. Now all of a sudden they're in third, and if they lose a third straight at home, they lose the invincibility at home, but more importantly, they lose to a division opponent that they should beat. If they're a playoff team, I mean, let's put brass tacks on. They should win this game. But if they don't, then I think it shows bigger problems. And now you're 2 games below 500.
And the crossover comes into effect.
Yeah, and you've lost that. Not only have you lost that home field stigma, now you're literally fighting not only Montreal and Toronto, but the 4th place team in the West too.
It's going to be a tough time. It's going to be an interesting game. Let's end up on a fun one, guys, here. Rock Thomas, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys saw that kick return to open up the second half. I mean, that's is thrilling. That's what we think about when we think about Canadian Football League and the wide open and the wild plays. I'm going to open it up. AJ, you can start with this. That play makes me think, just excitement. It makes me think, my goodness, the wide open field and kick returns, punt returns, and that this should be happening almost every single week. As it stands right now, AJ, who to you is the most exciting player in the Canadian Football League? And I have a feeling I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, it's definitely by far the biggest positive for the Ottawa Red Blacks, and that's Devontae Dedmon. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's going to play this week against Hamilton. If he does play between now and the end of the season and he returns another kick for a touchdown, he becomes the fastest to 5 kick return touchdowns in the CFL, breaking Gizmo Williams' record. So, he is just an electrifying player. He sees the holes and he's able to just blow through them when he sees them. And every time he touches the football, he's a threat to score. That's how exciting Devontae Dedmon is. I mean, we've seen some pretty great returners in this league over the course of the last decade. We've seen some pretty great returners in Ottawa, including Deontay Spencer, who's got the all-purpose record for almost 500 yards in a game. And Deontay, is playing in the National Football League right now with the Denver Broncos. But, as good as Deontay Spencer was, and Chris Williams and Chad Owens and Frankie Williams and some of the other guys we've seen over the course of the last decade. I mean, Chris Rainey and Stephon Logan, obviously to me that the standard is Henry Gizmo Williams. Pinball Clemens is number 2 when it comes to that. But, what we've seen here with Devontae Dedmon this season and going back to 2019 and his 2 kick return touchdown game against Montreal, he's got the ability to be that type of player for a long time in this league if he stays in this league. And honestly, selfishly, I'd love to see him as an Ottawa Red Black for a long, long time and kind of work his way up the charts and get into CFL lore like those players. But I'm not sure we're going to get a chance because, there's some positions that translate really well going from the CFL to the NFL and return is one of those positions. So I'd be surprised if he didn't get a couple of serious looks in the NFL and some offers and, enjoy him while we can right now, because this is a real special talent and a guy that's motivated. He's a gamer. He's competitive, even on a real bad football team. He was really upset to be knocked out of that football game on the weekend against Montreal. So total package here. And to me, the most electrifying player in the league.
Matty, you got the unique angle of seeing some of these players. And I mean, it doesn't have to be a kick returner. It could be wide receiver, running back. Who is must-see television in the Canadian Football League at this point?
I will say this very quick before I answer that. I think this is one of those occasions where we give a lot of love to the league that we all cover. And I've covered the NFL too. And we all saw Gus Johnson losing his mind after that missed field goal return. Let's say it definitively. When it comes to special teams, the CFL is just so much more exciting than the NFL, and it's not even close. I mean, partly I think it has to do with the length of the field and some of the rule changes. But the fact is, when I look at all of the special team returner guys that I've seen and how different they all are, Devontae Dedmon, he kind of reminds me. Certainly, I never saw Gizmo play in person, but I did see Chad Owens play, and Devontae, he has no problem running into tackle. He's like, yeah, that's okay. I will go into tackle. I will break a tackle. That's fine, and I will spin around. I will, and AJ, this, and Lapo has said it as well, that guys want to block for this guy. They want to block for him. They and if they don't block for him, they take it personally as if they've let him down. And that's a credit to what Bob Dice has done and that special teams unit. But to watch him, he kind of reminds me also of Chad Owens, and Dad knows this, who if Chad Owens didn't hurt somebody when he was going for a touchdown, he would take it personally. He wanted to run into tackles and hurt people. When he was doing his 3,000 combined yard seasons, I mean, he was incredible at it. But I'm going to go with Brandon Banks only because to watch, and he avoids tackles. He'll tell you he doesn't want to be touched. He will literally take the longest route to get to, and he doesn't return much anymore. And obviously he's been injured this season, but to watch him when he returns, to see the speed that little guy has, and to see the way that he would just blaze around people in some of the returns he had. Now, right now it's Devontae Devin. There's no argument, but to see everything, all the returners, all the exciting players I've seen up close, when Brandon Banks was on his day, and I go back to, even the 2014 East Final, but, even recently, the last couple of years when he's returned and he's been able to break one open, it's incredible. Like, he's just like, he will take the longest route around. He will take the hardest road around to get around people, and they still can't stop him. But right now, Ottawa's been blessed with, having guys like Chris Williams and Deontay Spencer and Dedmon, and to see at this point what they've been able to do amidst a very disappointing season. I mean, Dedmon's been awesome.
Dan, and you're kind of right there, Matty. Like, I mean, you're right. Injuries have really hurt Brandon Banks this season and really slowed him down. But to see a guy go at 150 pounds, I mean, literally 155, 50 pounds, to see him play football the way he does, it really is must-see TV. Dan, who's your guy?
Yeah, I mean, I will echo Devontae Dedmon. To me, he's the one of the few players I would pay to go watch. But the guy who continually I marvel about is Brian Burnham out west. Mm-hmm. I really wish he played out east, because I could watch him play 18 CFL games and every game marvel at something that he does, because this guy, he's a human highlight film, in my opinion. And everything that, I mean, he'll go up 9 feet to get a ball. He'll go down 2 inches off the turf to get a ball and turn around and be upfield before you know it. And I just wish I could see him play more, because he's the guy that I would pay money to watch.
And play in big games. Like, you want to see him play in West Finals and Grey Cups. And right now, it's not happening.
It every time Riley goes back to pass, I'm wondering, where's he going to find Burnham now? And it's not fair, because Willie Whitehead is as good a receiver but I mean, I just think every time the ball's in the air to Burnham, it's like, what's he going to do now to get the ball? To me, I mean, Devontae Dedmon, I've never seen a player this year that strikes fear into opposing coaches more than we have to shut this guy down. And if he only averages 9 yards a punt return, you figure we've won the game, because we've held him to 9 yards. And I will echo what the other two esteemed colleagues here have said about Dedmon. But I wish I could see Brian Burnham play more. I really do.
It's actually an outstanding selection there. I mean, I think last year, or at least 2019, I believe it might have been against the Argos, had not one but two outstanding catches against in the back corner of the end zone, kind of looking up into the lights, and just an outstanding kind of athlete in the terms of his ability to flex his body, whatever it takes to catch a football. He really is an outstanding quality player. And it's funny, because you're right. And unfortunately, some of these guys, these teams are playing out west, and you just don't get to see them, especially playing out east. And, kind of Eastern guys here. Some of these games are late at night, and sometimes on Monday, Tuesday. Well, we've seen all week of this year, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, games on Thursday, Friday. It's a tough one. Now, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. This has been another outstanding chat here about Canadian football. We are really getting into the nitty gritty of the season, and it's going to be real fun to see what teams are going to take that next step forward, or going to, who's a contender and who's a pretender. Dan Ralph from CP, the rookie, outstanding. You have now graduated. We're looking forward to seeing you another time. AJ, we're looking forward to you bouncing back. Good luck to the Red Blacks. And boy, if they pull the upset, it's going to be something else for the Tiger Cats, and more fodder for us here on the Tiger Cats Audio Network. Matthew, you're a pro. You're outstanding. We look forward to seeing you on the sidelines. Always a pleasure. What Chuck? By the way, one quick question: what color are you wearing on the Chucks this week?
I can't. That is a. It's kind of it's a moment of inspiration. I improvise sometimes, I don't plan them out like I used to. I used to plan them out. I used to have 75 pairs of shoes, and then I decided that I was going to be 35 years old and not own 35 pairs of sneakers. So Dan and if anyone on this call, Dan has seen the evolution over a decade of all my shoes from when they were always just red ones to when they were orange and yellow ones. So we've come a long way, but not far enough away from getting from maybe a good. I'm just looking over them now. Maybe a good pair of Chucks this week, Bowen.
You know, the funny thing is, we're so comfortable with gambling and sports nowadays. You may become a prop bet.
As long as I get to see a little bit of that payout, I'm okay with it. As long as I get to see a little bit of that payout, I'm okay with it.
Guys, this has been outstanding. Thank you so much again. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, we're talking CFL every week. This is the CFL This Week. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe. Let your friends know that this is your source of good, outstanding, equal, balanced, controversial at times CFL talk. And if you're listening to us on the Tiger Cats audio network, you can get us on tigercats.ca or anywhere else where you listen to your podcast. I'm your host, Bubba O-Neil. Looking forward to catching you next week. Take care.
The CFL This Week with Bubba O-Neil. Subscribe, like, and get the deepest takes on Canada's game every Monday.